This has been a long time coming. Last year, I announced in one of my weekly updates that when the time comes, I would be reviewing the examination portion of the away mission selection test upon completion for World Trigger, and as of chapter 256, that time has arrived. Of course, I will also be reviewing the battle portion as well, but for the time being, we have a load of things to discuss regarding the closed environment portion. A mix of both individuals and strategies with tons of ideas that will no doubt come into play in the later portion of the series. There's a lot to touch base on, so let us jump back to volume 23 as it all kicks off in chapter 203. Of course, if you enjoy this review, make sure to support the video however you can. Anything is appreciated. As the ball gets rolling, Tamakoma 2 is presented with the test schedule and a preliminary survey. As laid out by Shiori, we got an orientation, then interviews for the captains. The day after the interviews, phase 1 will begin, which runs for a week, and phase 2 immediately after, only lasting 2 days. In short, the agents will be in for a long ride. As far as the questions go for the survey, we are met with 3. Firstly, do you, the participant, seek to join the away mission? Secondly, besides your own teammates, who would you want to work with, and choose up to 5 other agents? Finally, the opposite of who would you prefer not to work with, and choose up to 2 agents. This data is most likely used to not only give HQ the reasoning they may need to establish certain rules and trials, but also to promote some unique situations in general that may or may not work out in an agent's favor. It's safe to assume that there are a lot of variables contributing to this process, and only time will tell. Take note that some A ranks are on the list and some aren't, meaning this pool of agents who are participating will be an overall mixed bag. Come March 13th, and the moment we have been waiting for has arrived. We do see some A ranks, but majority B ranks, referring back to Kito's mention that several other B rank agents would be selected as well. Present would be Commander Kito and Director Shinada to lay things out. Firstly, by Kito, he would explain the big picture of the test with a couple of noteworthy pieces of information. Firstly, as we found out during the negotiations, this away mission will involve more participants now more than ever, giving room for people who did not qualify to still join if they pass the exam. However, even if the opportunity is turned down, just qualifying will still be considered a major standout accomplishment. Regardless of what you decide to do, this test will be a major significant factor in future evaluations. A bit of a tough spot to put people in if they're thinking about opting out, but we all know how Kito rolls when it comes to obtaining results. Transferring the mic over to Shinada, we then get the phase overviews. Phase 1 will be a sealed environment lasting 1 week. The purpose is to simulate the long length of time you will spend in the ship. Within, agents will learn how to operate the equipment, and as such will be scored based on cooperation and daily tasks. Phase 2 will be a lengthy battle simulation going up to 36 hours. Straight up a battle of endurance, and for people like Mikumo, arguably is going to be one of his hardest fights yet given his low Tryon amounts. The big kicker here though is that for the first time ever, as announced by Shinada, agents will be placed in different squads, aka we're shuffling. In combination with the captain interviews, there will be 11 provisional captains with a total of 5 members in each squad. Those captains will be able to choose which team members they want. However, operators will be manually selected. As far as the captains, Utagawa, Oji, Kakizaki, Kitazoe, Kuruma, Kodera, Suwa, Nanomiya, Mizukami, Ko, and Wakamura will be the serving captains for the 11 different teams. For the operators being paired up with them, Sayako will be with Utagawa, Hikari will be with Oji, Nono will be with Kakizaki, Hana will be with Kitazoe, Rui will be with Kuruma, Rika will be with Kodera, Madoka will be with Suwa, Rin will be with Nanomiya, Yuka will be with Mizukami, Aki will be with Ko, and Maori will be with Wakamura. The rest of the operators will be administering the tests behind the scenes. From this point on, it is now draft time. As far as special rules go, former squad mates cannot be on the same squad. Each captain will be put in an order based off a lottery system, with Nanomiya going first and Wakamura going last and each rotational pick. The bulk of chapter 205 is pretty much that draft, and so overall, the teams come down to as follows. Utagawa will be working with Shiki, Urashima, Kuga, and Tomoe. Oji will be working with Hikari, Suji, Ikuma, and Obishima. Kakizaki will be working with Nono, Taichi, Kage, and Inukai. Kuruma will be working with Rui, Hokari, Yuba, and Korai. Kodera will be working with Rokuta, Okudera, Miura, and Kitora. Suwa will be working working with Madoka, Oki, Mikumo, and Katori. Nanomiya will be working with Rin, Azuma, Chika, and Emma. Shout out to Nanomiya for being a bro and putting the future couple on the same team. He's a real one for that, and I'll give it to him. Mizukami will be working with Yuka, Arifune, Kashio, and Teruya. Ko will be working with Aki, Daichi, Yuko, and Kazuki. Kitazoe will be working with Hana, Tanuka, Kikuchihara, and Kai. Finally, Rokuro will be working with Maori, Hanazaki, Hisato, and Hiyuse. Expect to see these chibis used a lot throughout these reviews, but these are our unexpected teams, and of course, we are in for the set of interactions we never know we needed till we did. Now, we've been getting a lot of crazy curveballs. So many that at the time of this, I was feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of theories as to how this may go, but the cherry on top will actually come from the judging system. Including the top brass, the rest of the A-rank agents will be the ones judging everyone during the test. Almost every single character that we know of in this series gets a role in this arc. This is by far one of the biggest efforts I have seen to utilize a cast to its fullest, and I would not be surprised if other anime were to have recording challenges in the future due to Toei having to pull together so many voice actors. Before concluding, we have a few more rules put into place as well regarding communication for tactics and just overall talk between teams. Firstly, contact between team members before the test is forbidden. It's clear that the top brass wants everything to be formulated in the heat of the moment. For the captains, it's important that they don't miss the interviews on the 16th. There is a lot of data to process, and for a rare perspective, we actually get some time for the A-rank agents to voice their input as well. Notably, we get to see Katagiri Squad and Kusakabe Squad being all present for this judgment portion as well. Some interesting factors that the A-rank agents will be looking at will notably be a lot more about personality and just who these agents are as people. If I were to summarize all of this information in my own words, Ashihara is telling us to consider everything. From personalities to social flaws to brains and demeanor, do not overlook a thing because all of it matters. Each squad has members full of strengths and weaknesses, and what's going to matter most is how these strengths are utilized to the best of their abilities throughout this test and how the weaknesses can be made up for by other squad members. If some people don't get along, how is that dealt with? If some are bad at being around girls or boys, how can that be remedied? If there are people with low Tryon, how can they still have an effective role to play without burning through their reserves? The A ranks and top brass will be taking all of those things into account as the days go by, and of course, so will we. The end of chapter 206 marks the beginning of the sealed environment. Our POV will then switch to Mikumo arriving with his team in the morning as they change into attire. Some simple shirts, which I like to assume had designs picked out by Ashihara's editors, alongside everyone receiving a personalized trigger. The environment itself equipped with all necessary amenities, and shortly after entering, Assistant Director Kyoko Sawamura lays out the playing field. Firstly, the facility itself is powered by the Tryon of the agents, meaning that low Tryon amounts are in a tough spot here. Tryon bodies will remain active from 9 AM to 9 PM, and violating that rule will lose teams points. Furthermore, each team will have a laptop that runs on the user's Tryon and a communication device that runs on battery. The captain's laptop contains the rules and assignments, in which leaves everything up to the captains for steering the ship. To break the ice, it's instructed that each captain elaborates upon their reasoning for choosing their squad members, giving us more insight into how far ahead these characters may have been thinking. From Utagawa, his thought process aligned on going for a squad that excels in mobility adapted long-term combat. He also takes a quick moment to respectfully alert Kuga and Kotaro about Shiki's nervousness and ask them to help out in that aspect. Consideration like this will for sure go a long way. OG's approach was a little bit more straightforward, going for a team who can run and slash. However, unlike Utagawa, who's a bit more subtle about it, he does let everyone know that Tsuji is not so great around the ladies and to go easy on him. Kakizaki took on more of a gamble. Even though Kage and Inukai don't get along, he went for the long-term gain in terms of gathering experienced agents who have fought against A-ranks. Kitazoe leaned towards making the best of the situation. Already being at the mercy of the lottery, he decided to keep agents of similar age range together for the sake of balance. Kuruma had an idea to specifically recruit Yuba to help keep things in order, since this is a overall massive shift from Suzunari first, on top of the fact that everyone's good on stamina and long-term encounters. Kodera looked towards the late game as well with the battle phase and settled on choosing members geared towards mobility and lower Tryon consumption. consumption, on top on choosing top-notch team players. Nanomiya focused on utilizing his first pick position to get power players, and Emma was just the icing on the cake to help a bro out, albeit under the cover-up of triple snipers that would feel like home for Rin given she's from Arafune squad. Of course, for Amatori, her usual cushion is gone, and she will have to step up to the plate with Nomikumo to be her wall. Mizukami went for a haul of those with great IQ, though it may be a trade-off in terms of the battle phase, though at least it'll secure the bag. Ko puts more faith in his operator, stating that he really didn't have a play to make with the lineup, but with Aki as the operator, anything can be made to work. On top of never being a captain, picking up a team of second-in-commands will help close that experience gap. Wakamura is pretty straightforward and honest, stating that he was picking who he thought would be best in the moment. You can tell that there is uncertainty present, but even so, he's willing to put the best foot forward with his team as support. Finally, for Suwa, in taking into account of the drawn lots, he relied on his instincts to put this squad together. However, he also points out that this lottery was rigged from the jump based off the survey. The purpose, to put the unlikely on the same team. Everyone go ahead and say their prayers for Mikumo. With the basis of the provisional squads established, we bounce back and forth between the A ranks observing and other squads making way. Pulling back to Wakamura's squad, with Mikumo's heads up, they go ahead and address the issue of Fused being unable to read Japanese. We gotta keep in mind that not everyone knows about his position, and so while he is able to understand voices due to the capabilities of a Tryon body, reading is a different story. At the same time, looking over at Mizukami's squad, we see Mizukami actually go in and omit some information about the battle simulation assignment before sharing the rest of the regular stuff with his teammates. Now here, I feel it's pretty simple as to the reasoning, as it's important to focus on what's in front of you and keep attention focused in one direction at a time. You don't want to worry anyone or direct attention elsewhere than where it needs to be, which led to this executive decision. Pulling us into chapter 208, Suwa squad pretty much gets a feel for the layout of the area, crunching down on any surprises as everything pretty much feeds on Tryon minus a few things here and there. Given how long we'll be abroad, establishing concerns about food and hygiene are pretty essential, and we're able to get the general idea. We also get an unusual situation of missing one bed, which will have to be addressed. Overall, the main rules are pretty straightforward. Complete the provided assignments, survive the 7 days, keep the Tryon bodies on from 9 AM to 9 PM. The assignments are split up into two categories. Universal, which has a total of 400 problems that must be all completed by the end of the test. Then we have Delegated, in which there are 1,000 problems that are meant to be split up amongst the team with the goal of completing as many as you can. For an even split, it comes down to 600 problems per person among the 7 days total, with the delegated problems looking to be more challenging than the universal. At this point now, it will come down to per squad approach as to how these are handled based off everyone's own thinking. For Suwa, he opts to prioritize the universal ones, and those with spare time will handle the delegated. We also have a random variable in the mix with special assignments, which will be delivered without warning. So on top of it being RNG, it will most likely be testing squads' reactivity and ability to put out fires quickly. Then we are introduced to the battle simulation, which is basically a 5v5 online game, but we'll cross that bridge on day 2. The key thing to remember is that the sims can allow teams to edge out one another in terms of score per day, which can prompt a major upset. Operators also have a bit more to do as well, as around 9 PM every day, they all have to go to their own special rooms to write a report on the 7 days events, solving the missing bed mystery and overall promoting a bit of a rotation as Kotori gets the single room while the boys split the double bedroom and capsule bed, albeit rotating, as everyone must be in the capsule bed at least once. For the rest of the day, the assignments were tackled, and we even get Ashihara and the staff inserting themselves into one of the questions as a bit of an Easter egg. Of course, the fun doesn't stop there, as the end of chapter 208 would introduce our first special assignment. It would come in the form of a question, asking agents for what reason do they think squads were shuffled, prompting a response that must be under 400 words. Now obviously, this is asking for deeper thinking than what they learned at the orientation, and so we take to each squad. Mizukami squad lean towards not going for a hypothetical correct answer, and more so putting their own best perspective forward. Kodera squad takes into account of the deadline and decides to spend 20 minutes coming up with an answer and then 10 minutes for writing a report. Kakizaki squad more so works through their answer from scratch with some tensions between Kage and Inukai still present. Kitazoe Squad is leaning towards the shuffling being more of a stress test, which is evident by Kikuchihara's own inner thoughts as he recognizes that the lottery was also rigged. Wakamura Squad is bouncing ideas off each other based on who may or may not be affected by the results of the exam. Kuruma Squad also leans towards not creating a perfect answer and settles on the shuffling, allowing a new mesh of personalities to take place. Murakami Squad leans towards a means to exposing weaknesses that agents won't see often on their own usual squads. Nanomiya Squad leans towards allowing agents who have certain safety nets to grow without them. People like Mikumo and Wakamura are mentioned here. Take note of the fact that Emma does apply this thought process to Nanomiya as well, given what had happened to Haruhara and her choice to go to the neighborhood. Suwa Squad digs a little deeper and starts to think about how the captains ended up being chosen. The overall process looking towards the future of Border and how some people may be tested for becoming future captains and future upper management. Which is actually very interesting given we've rarely talked about the late game of Border as an organization, but before we can go any further, the power does shut off, indicating that there simply wasn't enough Tryon in the system upon the first use. Mikumo and Oki get it back up and running, but this ends up sapping more from Mikumo than he may have expected. Upon getting back to his desk, his laptop is dead, and given it's powered by one's own Tryon, we can only assume that his reserves are empty, concluding chapter 209 and will be the conclusion of part 1 for this exam review. From these first set of chapters, this is by far one of the most ambitious arcs out there and a bit daring given the approach to the exam arcs being taken quite literal this go around. I know a lot of people may find this boring or slow, but to me, this is just another instance of World Trigger at its best and Ashihara's bread and butter on full display. We have a mix of agents like never before, in which I'm looking forward to seeing the abundance of interactions that may come, but for now, Mikumo has once again arrived in a tight spot, and under new leadership, the course of action falls on Suwa. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring me to the end of this video. Make sure to come by next time, as we will complete the rest of volume 24 and enter the beginning of volume 25. As always, thank you very much for watching, and make sure to leave all your thoughts in the comments section down below. Be safe out there until we meet again in the next video.